Seth.
Well, welcome back to the Pastor Pod. We're here on another exciting episode. We're on episode 81. If you are new with us, I'm Josh, and I'm a pastor in Venice, Florida, here with my co-host, as always, Jay Mudd. And today is going to be an exciting podcast because our good friend Tim Flowers is here with us from West Palm Beach. He's an executive pastor at Grace Fellowship Church. So welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite for sure.
I noticed, Josh, you didn't tell people where I'm from. You've left that off now.
Well, usually I don't say it just right. Like I usually say Orlando, and he's like, "Well, I'm not in Orlando. I'm in Horizon.
I know,
Horizon
I know.
West." Or,
I know. I try to give you a hard time.
Trying to do a better job of that. But he is in the Orlando metro area, actually on the back door of Disney World. Let's just start saying that. Tim, I'm not sure if you know this, but Jay watches the Disney fireworks from his back porch.
Oh, really?
So, that's fake news. Yeah. My son watches it from his bedroom, not from my back porch. You can't see it from my back porch. The trees are in the way. Yeah, my son has to. He's got the spot from his bedroom. But that is the true and accurate statement. But anyhow, Tim, it's good to see you. I think I don't know the last time we hung out, but I do have great memories of blowing up watermelons in my backyard in Texas with you.
So
do you remember this?
You showed me a way. Yes, you showed me a way to use sparklers to do things that I'm pretty sure I can't say on recording, but it makes watermelon disappear. So I've used that skill many times in my life. So I appreciate your ministry. I really do.
So you have used that again. You've used it beyond that point. Great. Yes.
On pumpkins, on watermelons, and several things. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Josh, that was a great camp. Your brother was there, Josh. It was actually your brother and Tim. I brought them in to do a retreat for me when I lived in the great state of Texas.
Man, what year was that?
That had to have been 20, I don't know.
2006
to 2007, something like that.
Yeah, that's like years ago. I mean, we all met at Bible College. So if you're listening in, you're like, who are these guys? How do they know each other? I met Tim at the Baptist College of Florida as well as Jay, and built just have great friendships with both of these guys. But the fun thing about Tim is I literally when I came on campus, I mean, Tim Flowers had a following. Not only because his name is Tim Flowers, but he was the BCF like DJ of our radio station, WFBU. So Tim, I just wanted to go back to memory lane just one more time and just those are good memories of you running the radio station.
Yeah, radio station is a loosely defined term. It was like a closet with some equipment in it. That was basically our radio station. And we had a total of 25 people in the town. So there was about 25 listeners. And it was a low power radio station.
The living is easy in Graceville, right?
It is.
Yeah, those are great times. So Tim, tell us, for all those that are listening today, tell us about you and your family, a little bit of your calling to ministry, and just kind of introduce us to a little bit of who you are.
Yeah, just real quick, my wife and I, we've been married for 16 years. She was an educator for 13 years. She now homeschools our two little girls, Julia and Abby, 12 and 9. Julia is an artist, plays piano, doing her mom proud, starting to sing and lead worship and do those kind of things. My 9-year-old is a natural born leader. She's pretty much the youngest person in the room most of the time, and she's the one who is bossing everybody around and is in charge. And the weird thing is, adults listen to her. I don't know why. So that's my family. They are fantastic, very, very, very blessed. And then been here at Grace Fellowship for the last 5 years in West Palm Beach. Moved here from Alabama, which has been a little bit of a culture shock, but a blessing at the same time.
Awesome.
So what are some of the differences between coming from Alabama and West Palm? Because I know, of course, for those that don't know, Grace Fellowship Church is incredibly diverse. It's a church for the nations, which is awesome. Love what you and Jeff, my older brother, is also working alongside Tim. But tell us some of the differences you guys experienced when you made the move.
So West Palm is different than Alabama for sure, culturally, but also Grace is unique in and of itself. So in Alabama, Alabama's considered, a Bible Belt. You and I both did student ministry in Alabama, and kids would live one way during the week and then know the right answers on the weekend. In South Florida, they just don't. They just tell you like it is. They're not trying to give you a right answer. They're just telling you exactly how what's going on in their lives, which is refreshing and shocking at the same time. So Grace is unique in the fact that we have 72 first generation nations represented within our congregation. First generation nations. So we have people from literally all over the globe coming to Grace. And Grace is located in West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, I believe it was back in 2017, Barna did a research study of the most never churched cities, not unchurched, not de-churched, but never churched cities in the U.S. And West Palm Beach was the #1 never churched, followed by Sacramento, I think it was Sacramento, California, and then New York as never church. That means no church background, no idea about a church background. And we've seen that come through our starting point, like our membership class. We've seen that reality come through there where there's no church background whatsoever. So that's a unique aspect of Grace. Even, this past week, we had somebody coming through and they've been attending Grace, but they let us know in our starting point class they're universalist and they don't know that they fully believe in just one God, but they like the way that we teach the Bible because they feel like they're actually learning the Bible. Real world, real life stuff. I don't think that ever happened to me in Alabama, ever.
Yeah.
So there's some things that are definitely different about it. With so many cultures coming together, it's definitely diverse, but it's one of those things. Most of the time, you talk to people and they're trying to become diverse, and there's some kind of strategy. Honestly, Josh, there's no strategy. It just is. So people ask us, how do you do that? And we're like, I don't know. It just is. And that's just who Grace is. And so being a part of that's a really unique. The other unique part of Grace is that we have a full-time or a full Christian school. So preschool through 12th grade, about 800 students in that school. So unique is in that culture is I came from just ministry background where we didn't have a school, and having a school ministry on your site means you aren't event based because you can't be. You can't be events driven because the space isn't available that often. So you're running that ministry that way. It's been a learning curve for me specifically.
So tell me, just because I think it'd be interesting. I think you hold the title of executive pastor. Is that correct?
That's right.
But so what does that mean for you? What do you actually do there at Grace that because executive pastor can mean a lot of different things. I think titles in general can mean a lot of different things. I don't know what they mean. So what is your role there specifically at Grace Church?
That's the $1 million question we're still trying. No, I'm just kidding.
That's great.
Yeah.
Spoken like a real executive pastor.
Executive pastor is one of those things, man. Like, I didn't start going to church until I was a teenager. Honestly, I hadn't really heard of an executive pastor until they're like, "Hey, would you consider being the executive pastor?" I'm like, "What is that?" So it's not a term that I was super familiar with. And I think every executive pastor role, I've had the unique opportunity to learn from a lot of great guys. Scott Crawford down at Family Church right down the road from us has been a great mentor and friend. But also he's invited me to roundtable discussions, either in the state of Florida or nationally, talking with other executive pastors. Jay, I think executive pastor role is completely different in every single church that I've ever seen. And
right.
Number one, I think it has to adapt around the lead pastor. It's who the lead pastor is and what the vision of the church is and what the church is trying to accomplish determines what the executive pastor's role is. And even my role here is adapted based on our needs. man, I've been kids pastor here for a little while we were searching for a kids pastor. That makes the job of trying to find a kids pastor a lot more important because I'm helping out with that. Currently I got 1 foot in student ministry right this second. And so there's still ministry items there, but a lot of it's administrative. So redoing systems, working with systems, developing team members, that's the big picture. But honestly, executive pastor's job is whatever the lead pastor determines it will be. That's basically what the executive pastor is.
Well, again, I think that's the reason why I asked you the question, because I kind of knew, I mean, executive pastor, every time I've talked to an executive pastor, one church, it looks different than a different church. So I was like, okay, what does that mean for Grace Church? What does that mean for you? What is your role? And thank you for defining that for me.
Yeah, because I believe it changes, well, at least in my limited experience. So over the last 5 years, it's adapted to whatever the needs of the church are at the moment. So sometimes that's more business administrative role. Sometimes that's more of a leadership role for ministries. Sometimes that is just getting into the nuts and bolts of all the systems behind the scenes and diving in and doing that. In 2020, our online presence, we knew that we needed to buy new cameras, and that was kind of a background thing because who watches the online feed? Like before 2020 happened, that was low on our priority list. When we shut down for 2020, I became an AV expert because that's what we needed at the moment. And so we completely revamped everything and got everything online, and that's still a vital part of our ministry now. But it's just adapted. And some seasons I'm more heavily involved in the school as well.
Okay. I want to ask you a follow-up question to something you said earlier. You said, coming from Alabama, West Palm is totally different, right? Kind of a culture shock. Is that fair to say? How's your family adapted to that? How have you adapted to that after 5 years? Have you kind of maybe gone, okay, I'm a little more comfortable than I used to be? Are you still, and I think this is interesting. And I'm coming from a place where, I moved my family from Central Florida, just north, not like Orlando area, but Central Florida, more of a rural country area of Central Florida, to Boston, Massachusetts, where I experienced, I believe, the same thing you're discussing here. And so I'm just curious about how you've adapted. Have you adapted? How are you feeling right now, 5 years in, after being in this new environment and this new culture?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. We got some really good advice when we first arrived. We were thinking about coming. We were told we have to view this as a missions opportunity and not just a ministry opportunity. That this would be, if you consider it a mission field, you'll last longer than 2 years. And then if you don't, then you won't last longer than 2 years. I feel like in Alabama, I knew a little bit more what to expect. Southern hospitality, barbecue. I know that's kind of silly examples, but I just knew what to expect. To an extent, I knew the tools in the tool belt that would be required to be successful there. Jay, coming to South Florida, the things that made those ministries successful there, all right, that was there. You got to leave those tools behind and kind of regroup. As far as family goes, now this is home. We call this home. When we say, hey, we're going back to Alabama, we don't say we're going back home. We're saying, hey, we're going to go visit some family, because this is home. So I think viewing it as a missions opportunity at the start helped, but now my girls are more comfortable with palm trees than they are pine trees. So it's for us, it's home.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know it's been cool to see, what God's been doing through you, through the stories that Jeff tells. And I know you've worked a lot behind the scenes, like you mentioned, as an executive pastor, being the second chair. You're helping execute vision, implement, like you said, systems, and you're also helping with the school, and then you're stepping in with kids ministry or youth ministry, wherever there's a need. Talk a little bit about the second chair principle, because I know that's kind of a new term that's been probably around for a few years, but really how that partnership works. And like you said a minute ago, there's different types of executive pastors because there's different wirings and giftings of lead pastors, but maybe just talk about that for a minute, about how that's worked well for you and Jeff, and what, because a lot of pastors listening in, that's something they're trying to develop, whether you call them an executive pastor, or maybe it's associate pastor, or just whatever amount of people they have on their team. That second chair role is crucial to a healthy church.
Yeah, and I do think there's people that are sitting in a role that's not called executive pastor. They may be called business administrator or whatever, and they're fulfilling that. So second chair is the term that's used to kind of encompass that second chair leader that's in the organization, that allows the lead pastor to be able to do what he needs to do. There's probably pastors that are listening to this that of churches of all different sizes. Does a church of less than 300 need an executive pastor? I would say probably not. But that means the lead pastor needs to have a whole lot more tools in his tool belt to be able to lead. I think it takes more leadership acumen to be able to grow a church from 100 to 500 than just jump in at a larger level where you're running in a lane, and making things happen as a group. It just takes more there. But once you get to once scale happens and things get larger, a lead pastor can't go visit 3,000, 5,000 people in the hospital. Like that just can't happen. Like, it's not doable. If they do, they sacrifice their family on that altar. And so that's where these specialized roles like the second chair would come into play. And so basically the way that I personally see it, and this has been from a lot of people speaking into this and into my life, is just whatever I can do to make the lead pastor successful. So looking at his gifts, his talents, what is more beneficial for him to be able to spend more time with our leaders and new people in our church, FaceTime, and then I take care of managing our staff, taking care of the day-to-day needs, making sure we have insurance, making sure we're covered in workman's comp, making sure that we're covered, like Florida and South Florida specifically right now with wind insurance. Man, that's an absolute nightmare. Some of these gray hairs are from trying to get wind insurance right now. I'd rather him not have to deal with that. Let him focus on ministering to people. We're in the middle of a capital initiative right now and doing a building. Let him be the face for that. Let me take care of the stuff behind the scenes. So the second chair principle is basically like, do what needs to be done so that your lead pastor in your church can be successful. If your lead pastor is successful, that means your church is going to be successful. What do I mean by that? Lives changed. Are lives being changed? Is the church going in the right direction? And is your staff culture healthy? Because you could be leading a growing church, but the staff culture could be an absolute nightmare. And so having both of those, I think, are very, very important. And that's part of what the second chair does. It's not I've seen some people try to be in the second chair, and it's their, hey, I want to preach every time I could possibly preach because I really want to be a pastor. I think that makes it difficult. If that's your end goal, is to be a lead pastor, go be a lead pastor. Don't try to do the executive pastor role. That just makes it more difficult as a lead pastor.
And if you don't know, and I think, and Tim, you were a worship pastor for many years, along with serving with you in Alabama. I mean, you help really shape so much of the culture and systems and developing a creative team. And so you have such a wide range of gifts. I've always appreciated that about you. One thing I used to joke with you about is the fact that you knew how to fix everything. I said, the problem is you know how to do all this stuff. I said, that's why I don't know how to do hardly anything. So nobody asked me to do anything.
But yeah, I was a worship pastor for a long time, but I don't think I was a very good worship pastor. I knew my limitations. And so what I felt like I was better at is building teams and developing people. So if I could just do that, like, so the last church I was at where I led worship, like, you may have heard me sing once or twice a month. That's about it, because we develop team members that can do that. And then I think that's one of the goals of a church that has an executive pastor, is try to figure out what each member of your team is good at and put them in their sweet spot. Like, don't always look for a spotlight. Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. Put your team members in their sweet spot, encourage them in it. And if there's some deficiencies, help them with them. Don't put them down. Don't, like, okay, give them steps. Steps are key. Just identifying a problem anybody with any kind of criticality can do that. Okay, what's the step? How are we going to overcome this, or how are we going to mitigate this?
So Tim, share with us a little bit. You've talked a lot about different things that you do there at the church and things of that sort. So what are some of the lessons you've been learning? Let's just dive deep into, this is your game. This is your opportunity to share some of the big things that you've been learning that you think would be really beneficial to pass on to other pastors. I think there's so much here. We could probably go on for another couple hours, but share with us a little bit of insights. Give us some pointers here of some things that you've been learning in that second chair executive pastor at Grace Church.
Yeah, in that vein, I want to say this before I get into that. Don't be afraid to fail. So many times people are afraid to fail. Like those failures, what leads to better things happening. So there's been some, like even in the last 5 years, we've tried some stuff and it didn't work. And that's where you just got to go, you know what, guys, I wanted to try this. That didn't work. That's on me. Let's move on. Let's try this, and this. And so we have done that. So Josh mentioned, like I like learning and I like knowing how things work. I was the kid who took everything apart when he was younger to figure out how it works. And then sometimes that toy and thing didn't work when you put it back together. But I'm that guy. I want to know how everything works. But one of the lessons I've learned, Jay, is I don't have to be the expert at everything. It's better for our place if I'm not the expert at everything. So real life example, going through and redoing our entire financial system. So I started the process, and then not even halfway through, at the beginning, I realized, hey, I'm going to have to hire an outside CFO to come in and look at this and walk me through the process and give expert opinion. We've actually ended up where our controller is now not in-house, so we're using an outside controller. So the expertise that's not ministry is with experts. Does that make sense? And I'm not having to try to put that hat. And so I'm learning those kind of lessons to you know what, we're going to go with that. We're going to go down that pathway for the betterment of our ministries. Provides better accountability, provides better oversight, all those kind of things, and I could work with them instead of trying to balance all those plates. Because it's easy to pick up a plate and keep balancing it, and everybody pats you on the back and say, "Oh, you're doing such a great job." But once you get so many plates in the air, something's going to crash sooner or later. And so being able to know when to hand those plates off, and sometimes I hang on to them a little too long.
So you mentioned in some of the notes you've sent us, like automate the important is a phrase that I see that you've put down. And then of course you just mentioned outsourcing expertise. So your bookkeeping, is that what you're saying in essence, or is it the oversight of the bookkeeping you've outsourced?
So your controller. So we're outsourcing the reconciliation of everything as our month end closing, those kind of things. And then two, it gives a second set of eyes. We have somebody in-house that inputs and does all that. We have, we do payroll currently still in-house, but we're outsourcing everything else. So there's two sets of eyes looking at everything. And plus it's an entire team. So you don't have to worry about vacation. You don't have to worry about, hey, is this guy or gal going to take insurance or not? Those kind of things. You don't have to worry about that. It's a set cost, and it's functioning. And we know that it's up to current standards with IRS and everything, because that company is up to current standards.
Cool.
So
awesome.
that would be the outsourcing the expertise. Like I can hire an expert, but they're going to go on vacation. I can hire an expert, but they're going to get sick. I'm going to hire an expert, but there's extra cost associated with that. Yes, we can do that. I would rather hire people that are highly attuned to ministry than to do those areas specifically, because those are very high buy-ins to get somebody good at what they do versus just hiring a company to do it for you. Automating the important is, I mean, we kind of do this intuitively. Like you've got certain people that you need to meet with. Like instead of randomly scheduling week to week when you're going to do that and randomly doing that, set up a recurring meeting and don't miss it. You automate it. You automate whatever you possibly can. So we were touching a lot of things over and over again. For example, credit cards and all that kind of stuff, nuts and bolts like paperwork and all that kind of stuff behind the scenes. We now just pay for a little system. It's called Divvy. Anybody that's the executive pastor is listening, if you're not on Divvy, at least go look at it. I'm not sponsored, yada, yada, yada. It just saves a lot of time, energy, and effort behind the scenes. It automates the entire credit card process, approval process, and it ties into your accounting software. So what used to be 11 steps is 1. So those kind of things, we automate a lot of things behind the scenes, and we're starting to automate a lot of things within our ministries. That's what Jay, you were mentioning some stuff that was on my board earlier. That's some of the stuff up there. We automate how we do beach baptism. I know that sounds really cold, but like we know exactly what season. So I have all of 2024 beach baptisms planned out. They map out almost per weekend how they mapped out in 2023 and 2022. So our staff gets in that rhythm, and it's already been thought out. So we know 2 weeks after Easter, we're having a beach baptism, because that gives us 2 weeks of follow-up to get people to that beach baptism.
Mm-hmm.
So everything's already thought out. So you're not having to use when you automate it, you're not having to use a whole lot of brain power to get to the end result. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So that's the importance of automating it. So you think about it once and you set up a system to just make it run.
And then you're prioritizing the things that, of course, are your core ministries, right? Your core strategy to make disciples and get people engaged and be able to send out leaders. That's really what you're getting at. Because if you don't, then other things become priority, right? And that's And as executive pastor, you kind of are, in a sense, you're kind of a gatekeeper for that too, right? You have to handle all the requests that come in from staff members or people in the church of all the things they want to do. Talk about that. Has that been hard for you in South? I mean, I'm in Southwest Florida. It's a little different culture than where you're at. Have you struggled with that with all the, whether it's a program or a ministry that someone has? How do you filter some of that? How do you help, Jeff and the staff kind of like stay on track together?
Yeah, and there's a healthy balance to this. There's another executive pastor I know that he jokes and he says, "Yeah, I'm the pastor of no," because that's basically what he says is no. Yeah, I think gatekeeper is a better term than the pastor of no. For us, there was a lot of trimming that needed to be done. So before your brother came, so everybody, I think you mentioned this earlier, your older brother is actually our lead pastor. So before he came in, there was a gap of 2 years where there was no lead pastor at Grace. And so naturally things silo. And when things silo, there's no oversight. And so every little ministry that had 20, 25 people had full reign of the property, basically. They could use it, kind of come and go. And well, that doesn't work real well when you have a school. And so Monday morning happens and 23 of your classrooms are a complete wreck because some ministry decided to have a birthday party in this room. And then some ministry decided to, have a water balloon flight in the theater. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff that happened, but now we've developed a system where basically the school during the week uses the property except for Wednesday night. And we've just developed an automatic system. All of our staff has a common language of, hey, that sounds wonderful, but these are the things that we do. And we instead of saying no, we tell them the things that we're going to focus on.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's great. I know as we're preparing to be in a building, we're Lord willing going to have a space, our own space. Being a portable church for almost 23 years, we haven't had to face some of those because we're only there when we can be there. So that's just something we're praying about.
And having a school campus puts you in a similar situation because it's used so much. So like our church is not very event driven, but man, you want to talk about personal contact and personal one-on-one attention. Like we're going to call you, we're going to text you, we're going to, like our starting point is based around our membership class. We have Tony Sanchez, one of the like most outgoing personal people you'll ever meet, sitting in that class. And the majority of the class, like we show some videos from our pastors giving the overview of what grace is, what we believe, why we believe it, why baptism is important, what it is, it's not salvation, why tithing is important. We do all those things, but we save a ton of time for Tony just to ask them questions and get their stories. And then on Monday morning, we get an update, handwritten, well, not handwritten, we use a thing called Microsoft Teams. He gives us an update of everybody he met. Hey, they're already saved, they're already baptized, they're coming from this state, they previously served in their church and kids ministry. They want to be, she wants to be involved in women's ministry. We have an entire list so that our pastors can follow up that week with everybody who came through Starting Point.
Mm-hmm.
And so we focus more on the one-on-one follow-up and the contact versus events. We don't do a ton of events just because we have limited availability with space.
That's awesome.
And I think what I'm hearing you say, Tim, is when you outsource things, when you automate things, honestly, by doing that, you're freeing some people on your team, whether that be you or others. You're actually freeing them to be able to do things they're really, really good at. And honestly, I think that probably sparks the creativity of any kind that happens within the context of the church, because they're not using that brain power, that mind, that mind power to focus on the mundane things. I know for me, my weakest, like I'm a church planter, and usually I do a really good job of getting the church going and things of that sort. But I've never had an executive pastor, but I've always thought to myself, I need to put somebody in place to do the things that just bog me down, because they take more power, more bandwidth for me to do than a normal person. Like there's some people who can do, let's just use something like, an administrative task. They can do that and it gives them life. For me, it takes me 3 times as long and it drains me. So what I had to do, I could never have an executive pastor. I never was able to, have one. But what I did was I found people in my church who were good at it. And I think you hit on this earlier. Like we didn't have to call them an executive pastor. We found people in our church that were really good at these things. And we said, hey, would you be willing to serve in this capacity? Because for somebody, there are people out there that actually get energized in life from doing books and from writing administrative things. And I can't even think about what it is, because my mind doesn't even want to register what it takes to do the administrative tasks of the church. My mind's like, I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to think about that. But there are people in our church and in our teams that are gifted in these ways, and it gives them life to do it. And I've always admired those that are administrative. They have that administrative ability. And I go back to it does take a whole body of believers to accomplish the mission of the church. And many people may frown upon or look down upon the person who's just sitting in an office crunching out some stuff that needs to be done. But what they don't realize is they're freeing the other people of the staff to really live in their sweet spot. This is your word, sweet spot. And being able to really do what is necessary to accomplish the mission of the church. So I just as I'm hearing you, I'm like, allocating, automating, giving away. You're freeing people to be able to do what they're really, really good at. And we have apps and other organizations that can do it.
To your point, Jay, I think there's a lot of churches that are, let's say they're, church planners, and they're growing their church, and they're at that 300-400 range. They automatically assume my first hire is going to be a student pastor or a youth pastor. Tim Stevens, incredible resource. If you've never heard of Tim Stevens, he would say, hey, I would reconsider that. If you're at the 300-400 range, you may want to consider your first hire being an administrator, because it will free up so much that will cause your church to grow even more, instead of you getting even more bogged down in those administrative tasks, and hiring another minister who's bogged down in administrative tasks, because you're going to hit a lid. So Tim Stevens, in his book, I think it's Simply Strategic Stuff. It's a fantastic book for any executive pastor out there. Tim Stevens, Simply Strategic Stuff. Basically, he's been an executive pastor for a long time. Learned a lot of things. And he basically outlines in 2-page chapters almost every area of a church that you would need to know about. He just gives you the nuts and bolts of it. And one of those is your first hire. Your first hire, you think, should be a student pastor, but it's likely better spent being an administrator, because it'll cause you to grow faster.
That's good. And when it comes to this idea of working with teams, you mentioned collaboration, cohorts, coaching. How have you learned from that, and how important is that? And or has your staff been also involved in that, in their growth?
Yeah, so we're involved in a local cohort here in Palm Beach Baptist Network, which is great. That's one of the best cohorts I've ever been involved in. Um, it's been fantastic. But I've also been involved in cohorts with our state, with executive pastor administrators. They call it the Second Chair Network. Involved in the Second Chair Network across the state of Florida, which has been great. And then I'm involved in one nationally that I was invited to, that we go to different places and meet. So you mentioned earlier, I came from a worship background, and honestly, I wasn't equipped for that job either, because I graduated with a degree in theology and a master's in religion. I've got no music background and became a worship guy. I just learned from other guys who do music. Just, okay, here's the basic things I need to know to be successful. Let me learn those things. And so even coming into this job, I knew systems, I knew how to develop people. Never done anything with a school. There's a lot of things that I'd never touched or done or were even aware of. Getting involved in these cohorts, there are so many guys who are willing to invest in me, and I'm very, very thankful. Scott Crawford being one of them, right down the road at Family Church. So many guys that were investing in me and just sharing knowledge and, hey, you may not want to do that. Don't do that. Consider this. Don't do that with insurance. It's going to come back to bite you. Do this. Having those conversations and getting involved with those guys, and even just, I think the key is just having the humility to sit down at the table and say, hey guys, I don't know. Like, help me here. I don't know. Here's what I'm thinking. What would you do? And you'd be surprised at the amount of feedback that you'll get, and people who will call you, and people who get, I have personal cell phone numbers of guys across the country at this point that if I have an issue, I could just text them, and I do on a regular basis, and they text me back. Here's what I would consider. Check your state laws, but do this. So basically that's what's going on with that. If you're not involved in a cohort, some kind of coaching call, somebody outside yourself, and ministry can be crushing. It can be absolutely crushing. People that are outside of ministry don't know that the things that can come across, whether it's stuff dealing with taxes, the IRS, attorneys, property lines, all kinds of weird stuff that will just consume your day. Ministry can be crushing. So get involved with people that are like-minded, that can encourage you when you need encouragement, and then you need to be an encourager too. And so I'm getting to invest in other people. Right now I've got a call set up monthly with somebody who is in their very first staff position, and they're about to be ordained, and their official title will be executive pastor. He's got a business background, so I'm learning stuff from him as well. But so I talk with him once a month and trying to invest in him, like so many are investing in me. And so you got to get involved in somebody outside of your bubble of your church. For one, steal their ideas. They're probably doing a lot better than you are. Steal their ideas. And two, you're going to need the encouragement, and you're going to need to give encouragement.
Well, I love so much of what you're saying, because we're better together. And, one of my mentors talked about breaking the bubble, the bubble of whatever your church is in, always learning from others, whether they're a step ahead by amount of years they've been up in that position, or maybe they're at a different size of a church, or maybe a different approach. But it's that principle that you can learn anything from anybody at any time. And the one thing I do appreciate about you, Tim, is you've always had a teachable spirit. Even though you know a lot of great things, you still have a teachable heart. And I think that's what makes great leaders. And I think that's one of the things that we love about the Pastor Pod, for me and Jay personally, is that we love to learn from leaders like you, other guests that we have on, that it's one way that we're invested in by listening. So we appreciate you sharing, what God's teaching you. And I think for all those listening, whether you are executive pastor or you're a leader in your church, or you're serving the Lord in your gifting, there's a lot today that I think can really help you understand how the church, because at the end of the day, the church is to be a healthy structure so that God can get the glory, and that there's no cogs in the wheel of people connecting with one another. people serving the Lord in their giftings. And at the end of the day, we step back and say, like I try to say most Sundays, I try to stay out of the way and let the Word of God speak through preaching or through a small group session. So this has been good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. We've learned a lot here. Hopefully you've been taking notes if you've been listening in. Some good advice here. Some good very practical advice and lessons here from Tim Flowers at Grace Church. And so, Tim, is there anything that you didn't get to say that you were hoping you got to say, and maybe we didn't set you up, tee it up for you? Is there anything like, heavy on your heart that you want to get out there for the world to hear?
The only thing I want the world to hear is I appreciate Josh Robinson, Jag Mudd. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much for what you do. And investing in other pastors, I think this is fantastic. This is part of that encouragement that was talking about earlier. I appreciate what you guys do. Thanks for the work.
All right. With that being said, Josh, from Josh, Tim, and myself, thank you so much for listening in to another episode of the Pastor Pod. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you back here next week as we continue to have real and transparent conversations. See you now.